said neck scratch trance there. Good morning and welcome to City Sowers. Today we're going to talk about our goats and how we got them and why we have them and how we're having them in the city. And then we're also going to go ahead and go inside and we will check on the seedlings that we have going in there, and we can do a little progress report on how they're doing. So let's walk over here through the blinding sun on this crisp February morning. It's in the upper 30s today. It has not been this chilly for most of the winter. Good morning, ladies. Sweet Jane and Sweet Betsy. How are you girls doing? Okay, got their hay feeder all situated. Betsy is happily rubbing her rear end on a chair. So this is Betsy. Official name is Betsy Ross. And the reason that she is named that is because the day that we put the deposit down on these goats when they were babies was July 4th. So we felt that one of them needed to have a patriotic name. So I give you Betsy Ross. Hi, sweetheart. And then over here is Jane Eyre. And David named her because he felt that she just needed a classical name. Now we got both of these goats when they were 6 and 7 weeks old. And they were bottle babies. So they're very friendly to this day. Oh, Betsy. Even to this day, they'll want to climb up on your lap and just chill and chew their cud. So at least until about the last time Jane was pregnant, actually, which was last year, I used to take them up on my lap and do their feet that way because goat toes do grow constantly, so you do have to keep them in good shape. So I have a door plane that I'll use to file down the hoof instead of doing clippers, and you just have to do it a little more frequently. But they would just hang out on my lap while I filed their feet, and Jane actually would fall asleep while I was doing it. But once she started getting really big, it was a little uncomfortable for us to do it that way, and we had already built the head stall at that point, so sometimes it's just easier to do it on the stand, which we can take a look at that in a few minutes. We considered getting goats for the backyard because Audrey has had issues in the past with digesting dairy products. She doesn't always have a problem, but she was having enough of a problem that I considered getting goat milk products. But when I went to the store and looked into it, it was so expensive. It's too expensive to be spending that kind of money on a kid that doesn't have like a full-time problem. It's not super easy to pin down what her actual problem is. So I was thinking, well, if I'm going to spend that much money, then I might as well just get a goat. And so I did some research and I found the Nigerian dwarf goats, which are a miniature dairy breed, which was exactly kind of what we needed. And in our city ordinance, it says that we can have 2 miniature goats over the age of 4 months. So we decided, okay, we can manage this. We can do 2 goats. We can do 2 miniature goats. Because the breed isn't super popular or prevalent in our county, I realized that it was going to be really difficult if I got goats from this county to get them bred to someone that they weren't related to. So what I wanted to do was look outside of our immediate area for doelings so that when it was time to breed them, we would be able to easily find a buck that they weren't related to. So I found a breeder down in Southern California that has a website, and I was looking at their babies for that year, and I was like, well, I don't know that we're ready right now, but I'll take a look. And I actually saw Betsy's picture when she was a little tiny itty bitty baby. She was adorable. I fell instantly in love with her. And so I asked David if we could bump up our timetable, and he said if you can afford it, then we can get him. So what I ended up doing was I did some babysitting for friends, that were working, and I just did various other small jobs to raise some money. And I had an envelope that I put the cash into, and I wrote "Goat Fund Me" on the envelope. So that was my goat fund. And so when I raised enough money, they were $300 each, and I knew that she was going to need a friend. So I kept hunting through the list of babies that the breeder had, and I found Jane. And I didn't want to purchase goats just purely because I liked how they looked. And so I ended up, the website also had pictures of their mothers and their mothers' udders and all that stuff. So I was thoroughly doing my research, and I picked 2 doelings that I liked the look of their mothers and their udders and their records. And so I contacted them, and sure enough, they were still available. And so then when they got old enough, we made a road trip of it and went down there and we picked up our babies. And it was awesome. And they were adorable, and they were little, and they were still on bottles because they were only 6 and 7 weeks old, so they weren't weaned yet. And so I had to go through the whole process of learning how to bottle feed without ever having owned a goat. I had to go through the whole process of learning everything about goats by starting with baby goats. So some of the other things that we've had to do with having goats is goat proofing, because they can get into everything. And actually, when we had them, we still had the in-ground garden, which had a small fence around it, but eventually the borders of the garden started breaking down, so we had to decide if we were going to just renew the borders or completely redo the garden. So when we redid the garden, we put in all the raised beds and things like that, and so the goats, we knew that we had to make sure that it would be goat proof, and we knew that we were going to have baby goats, like little baby goats, in the future, so we had to make sure that we had a fence that would keep little baby goats out. So we ended up going with a hog panel fence, which is over here. And you can see it's got the larger squares up top, and then as it goes farther down, it gets smaller. So that was our hope, was to keep babies out. Now the reason that I have this 2x4 fencing on here is that I have a young chicken that is small enough that she can go right through these larger squares up at the top, and she kept slipping through into the garden. So we had to fence that off to keep her out. But otherwise, the fence itself has worked really well. It worked really well with the babies we had last year. We didn't have any goat break-ins apart from kids leaving a gate open or things like that. So we had to goat-proof the garden as well as the patio over here where all the hay and stuff is kept. So we put in this gate right here in the interest of keeping goats out of it. So it's a little more secure than most urban gardens would have to be, but it works, and our goats are happy. They get scraps fed to them through the gate, and they haven't had any issues, and they actually generally know that they're not permitted into the garden gate, so they don't usually fight us at it, which is great. And we also built this pen over here behind me. Now it's behind me. Over here, we didn't build it. We bought it. We bought it at Costco. It's just a 10 by 10 dog kennel, and it actually came with the roof cover and the black shade cloth that you see going all the way around it. But the plastic is just visqueen that we got from Home Depot, and we put that on only in the winter time when it's cold and wet. But once it starts to warm up, that'll come off. And the black shade will also come off because it's already under a tree right up there that probably in the next month will be covered in pink blossoms, and then it'll be covered in leaves. So it shades it really well. They don't really need the shade cloth on it during the summer months. We feed them free choice alfalfa hay all day and all night. They have 24 access to hay. And then they also do get grain. So we give them, they get half a cup each of wet cob, which cob is corn, oats, and barley. And when it's a wet cob, means it's been rolled in molasses to make it sweet. And so they think it's delicious, and they think it's a special treat, and so they devour it. And then we also offer them black oil sunflower seeds, which Betsy usually will just eat the whole handful in like one mouthful when I was milking Jane. But now that she's been pregnant, she wants nothing to do with them. She says, no, I don't want sunflower seeds. Okay. Jane will still eat them. But then here, this week actually, Jane will start eating calf manna. So it's a performance pellet that it's a good balance, gives them good energy, and I think it pretty much saved her when she was milking out last year, because she lost so much weight and went so dairy. She looked terrible, lost a bunch of hair, and so we upped her grain, and that got the ball rolling on her getting back to a healthy weight and good production. But she does really good. She was milking out when she had babies on her. I'd lock the babies up at night after they were 2 weeks old, and in the morning she milked out a full quart mason jar in the morning, and then had the babies on her all day. And so she was just pumping milk out for a first timer, and she did great. But she did get a little skinny. So the calf manna really helped get her back on track. So this week she's actually going to start with half a cup of calf manna in her diet to kind of help give her that energy to grow those babies, because we don't know how many are in there, but we know that she'll put everything she's got into growing them. So we'll go ahead and give her that extra support that she needs. When the goats were pregnant last year, I was a little nervous because it was like, I don't know what the milk's going to taste like. What if it's terrible? What if we don't like it? But I ended up going out and visiting Jess from Roots and Refuge out in Arkansas. And she had goats that were in milk. Now, she doesn't have Nigerians, but she had, the goats that were in milk at the time were the Nubians. And so I went out there and I tasted fresh raw goat's milk, and I really, really liked it. So that gave me great hopes for what was going to happen here on our little backyard homestead. So after that, I wasn't as nervous. And then learning to milk it's a little bit of a curve because the teats are so much smaller, but they're easy to milk out, and we loved the milk. It was sweet, it was rich, it was really good, and it made some amazing yogurt. Oh my gosh. I have become a huge fan of making yogurt, which I can do in a future video. We can talk about how to make yogurt from home, which I don't have goat's milk right now, but you can do it with any kind of milk. So that'll be a lot of fun. So then if we come over here, we can take a look at our stand that we actually got the design for it from Fiasco Farms website, which they kind of specialize in Nigerian dwarf goats. So they designed this stand that can be modified for standard goats to just make it taller. Primarily made out of PVC pipe that's been glued together to make a solid frame at the bottom here. And then we have one loose pipe up here that's attached at the bottom so it can't come out. And then it's just a dowel that comes through here to lock it in place. But this top portion actually is not glued in this joint, so you can actually pop this whole top section out to move it. It becomes a mobile head gate if you need it to be mobile. So people who take their goats to shows, or if you need to relocate it for any purpose really, which is super nice. Love it. And then it's just got a feed bucket zip tied on there so we can feed them their grain. Now the deworming regimen that I have the goats on is that I have an herbal dewormer cookie that is from Bite Me. Hello. That chicken is Frimple Pants, who is named after a black unicorn pony in one of Audrey's books. So she's a very curious chicken. I deworm the goats with the Bite Me Squirmy Wormy cookies. And they get one of those once a week, except when they're pregnant, because it does have wormwood in it, and that can cause uterine bleeding. And so they don't get that while they're pregnant. But the rest of the year, they get the cookie once a week, and they think it's a treat, and so I don't have to fight them, and it's a piece of cake. And then they do get the copper bolus once a year, and I don't have to fight them for that either, because all I do is stick it in a marshmallow, and they'll just chomp it right down. So there's no wrestling, there's no pellet guns, it's really simple and really easy. So I have not found goats to be a challenge. Granted, I only have 2. So for those of you out there who have more goats than that, and I know it's a lot more work because you're multiplying the number of animals, but for the way that we have our setup with only 2 goats in the city, it's been really not difficult to care for them. So I've been really happy with having them. Goodness, Betsy. This is one of Betsy's bad habits, though, because she's a bottle baby, is she'll chew on my fingers if I'm not petting her. She gets jealous of the fact that I'm not petting her, so she will grab my fingers, and she's not hurting me. She's just reminding me that she would like some attention. I'm being a brat. See, as soon as I scratch her, she stops. Goodness. You know that thing that they say about bottle baby goats? They chew on you, and they do. However, Betsy does it, and Jane doesn't. So, and they're both bottle babies. Bit of a close talker, aren't you? Hi, Betsy. While Jane sits there quietly enjoying the sun, and Betsy chews on my tripod. Stop it. We love every minute of having them. We really do, even though they can be brats. Hello. Alright, enough playing with my animals. I'm gonna have to go inside. Anyway, we can go inside and we'll check on those seedlings that we have in the trays in the house. So this tray has, let's see, these are the little cucamelons that were in the cups a while back. The Mexican sour gherkins, they're just wee. This one is a little potato cucumber, which is another smaller cucumber. So this is kind of a mixed batch. We've got tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers. This is just kind of a mix. And some of these are just not doing well, like this one over here, back here, that's not gonna do anything. The leaves on it died a little below the top, so we're gonna have to just take that out and replant. So this tray was a little less successful with the eggplants, so, but that's okay because our needs have changed, so we actually don't need as many plants. And then these over here are actually a science experiment for Nathan's class, which had a really, really poor germination rate, but you work with what you got when it comes to class experiments. Let's see, down here are all these many little tiny strawberries that I transplanted out of the cups. And I don't know how many I might have lost, but I think the majority of them at least have survived, which is great. I have some more in the cups that actually need to be transplanted, so that'll be another time-consuming job. And then this is a Kajari melon. It's a little behind all the other melons, but it'll catch up. And we have some more restarted tomatoes over there. Then we come over to the Big O tomato rows, which is nice. So the blank spot here is where I had some restarted tomato plants, and they were just too small to be in here with all these taller ones. And these are mostly tomatoes. This little little guy here is actually a Timbalo melon pear. I've never grown it before, so I'm very curious to see how they taste. It's supposed to be a really interesting fruit. So we'll give that a whirl. And this is a melon here on the end that is trying really badly to be in the light. Oh, it's got a little bit of a burn spot where it touched the light bulb. But let's see, this one is a Petit Gris de Reine, a French melon that I've never grown before, but it's supposed to be tasty. We have kind of a mix of tomatoes and let's see, I think these are eggplants. This one, let's see, yeah, this is an eggplant. And then this is the yellow monster bell pepper that Nathan is growing. It's doing really well. And then this is the whole tray of the pink Berkeley tie-dye seedlings that we actually started in the cups in a video, and they're doing really well. I have one pod that has 2 plants in it because I thought one wasn't going to make it, and they both made it. But they're doing really well. They're growing really well. And then down here I have some cucumbers that got really out of hand. So I had to move them down here. And fortunately I actually did have some onions that just didn't pull through. They were puny or they just didn't come up. So I just went ahead and left that row blank so that this plant can spread out a little bit, because our last frost date is actually supposed to be this week. So everybody's got to wait until after this week. And then these are the roselle plants that are doing really well. They're really tall, but they don't seem particularly leggy. They're nice and sturdy. I've never grown them before, so. These are peppers. I believe these are all peppers. Nope, peppers and eggplants. Oh, this little sadness happened because Nathan messed with one of the lights before I had them all the way secured, and it fell and broke the top off. So, sad day. It was a really, really healthy Corbaci plant until it got snapped. But that's okay, accidents happen, and that's why you plant extras. But they're doing really well. And then on the bottom row here is our little jungle of tomato plants, and I'm gonna have to raise these lights again because they are just growing so crazy. Crazy happy tomatoes. And these are a mix of different kinds of tomatoes. And then this random plant that I have kind of on the floor in here is actually a sweet potato. I brought it in from outside because it was just like a dead stick, and I brought it inside and said, well, maybe we'll see if we can bring it back to life. And it did. It brought in every single one of these leaves has grown on it since it's been inside. So I'm really happy with how that turned out. Thanks for joining me this morning as we chatted about our goats and checked on our plants. Hope that you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe to our channel. I hope that if anybody has been on the fence about wanting to get goats or going in the direction of having livestock, that they do consider goats and chickens and check their city ordinances, because you never know unless you ask. And what's the worst that they can do? Say no. So you can definitely check into that, and I would say that it is well worth your time and effort to have these animals, because it's so rewarding. Even if you can't do it on the scale that you necessarily want to, you can still get your feet wet and get into the whole livestock management, as well as producing eggs and milk and things like that. So it's really been a huge learning experience for me, and I hope that I'm able to pass some of that knowledge on to you. So this is your urban nerd with a goat herd telling you that you can grow where you're planted. Catch you next time.